Since this is our first show, I would like to start with a brief introduction of what we're intending to do. I'm Kumsal from Viroid Games. I would like to run a series of Godot talks with professionals. I have with me tonight, well, it's morning for him since you're in Japan, Guillaume Bouvier. The internet knows him from his YouTube channel, Ombarus. I'll leave the microphone to you. Why don't you start introducing yourself for people out there who haven't seen your channel yet?
You can call me Umbarus, and well, I've been working as a programmer for like 8 years in Canada, and then me and my family, we decided to move to Japan, and so I had to quit my job as a game programmer, and I thought it's a perfect opportunity to start trying to make my own game as an indie developer. And
Cool.
so for the past 2 years, I've been trying to like different source of development. I've been taking contracts. I've been doing YouTube. I've been developing my own games and all that. But it all comes from a background in programming and
Programming.
something I've been doing for a long time before that.
You have a general passion in programming.
Oh yeah, since the very beginning, like since I was a teenager, I knew I was going to go into computer science. So I did all of that. In Canada, we have a bit of a, well, in Quebec, I think only, we have a bit of a strange education system. So I technically did a computer science degree in college and then decided to go to university to do a bachelor degree in software engineering.
Interesting.
So I have like both. So I did some tech support before, and then after that, I moved more into programming and all that.
That's interesting you said that because I studied computer science in Turkey and my major was computer science. But halfway through the program, I learned that had nothing to do with software development. We actually had to enter a different program to study software programming.
Yeah.
So, which is sort of like, well, you see all the nerds in movies programming stuff, but there's so much more to so much more in computer science other than typing code, and that was sort of disappointing for me. Like, I actually hadn't really discovered what would entail later. So,
Oh yeah.
But
But
then
I
you're
kind of
yeah, good.
I kind of graduated around the 2000, right? So
Yeah.
this was at that time it was just starting. A lot of people I worked with actually came from electrical engineering, and a lot of people were just had learned by themselves or were coming from different. It's still very true today, but now you have like boot camps and all these kind of
Yes.
things for really learning how to program. But before that, like people were coming from everywhere, and I was the second graduation from my university class, I think, in software
Interesting.
engineering. So before that, it was electrical engineering.
You mean second year graduate? One of
Yes,
them.
it's like the year, like the first graduates from this program came the year before me. So like it
I
was a brand
yeah.
new program. And
Well,
not many university were offering actual software engineering classes at
yeah.
that time in
Interesting.
Canada. Yeah.
Well, I have more or less a similar story, I guess, year wise. I think we were the sixth graduates. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's around the same time. I guess universities were all picking up similar programs. So, generally interested in video games. I also know that you used to work for a game company too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Before coming to Japan, I was working for Gameloft, where they make a mobile game. My luck was that they don't make like really simple one. They're like the AAA of mobile gaming. So they have a
Okay.
lot of games like Asphalt, which is like a nearly AAA racing game,
Okay.
arcade style racing game, and I work on that. I work on Gangster, which is like a game for like it's basically the mobile equivalent of Grand Theft Auto. So you have
Cool.
everything, like you can pilot airplanes and shoot people in third person and all that. So I learned how to do like third person controllers
Yeah.
and camera works and physics for airplanes and all that.
Cool.
And I worked a bit on like other stuff like Dungeon Hunter, which is an action RPG. And of course, since it's mobile, there's also some small like match 3 games and stuff like that that I worked on. So I got a wide range of experience at Gameloft, which is
Yeah.
really great.
That's cool.
Helped me to get ready for making whatever I want now that I'm doing by
Yeah,
myself,
it all counts.
working by
It's like
myself.
all types of and levels of experience.
Yeah, there's so many things you need to work on when you're working on on a game by yourself. You know, the physics, the graphics, the
Yeah,
shaders, the controls, the
yeah,
gameplay itself, like the data structures and all that. So,
yeah,
like having touched a bit of all of this is really helpful.
yeah. These days, indies still have to do all those things by themselves. But in game companies, that those tasks are becoming more and more the domain of specialists. So this,
Yeah,
um, that aspect is changing. But you're an indie now,
yeah.
working on your project. Would you like to mention your project?
Yeah, right now I'm working on Solar Rogue, which is a kind of roguelike space adventure, I call it. It's a tactical turn-based game where you explore different solar system. You go from planet to planet trying to collect resources. There's a bit of crafting to involve, where the idea is that instead of like choosing your ship or your equipment at the beginning and then trying to find better equipment and leveling up your ship or something, you actually have to craft new ships that will allow you to go through the harder levels in the game so that eventually you can, complete the story and go back and save the world or something.
So
So
you are still working on a narrative to tie all the mechanics up.
there's, I'm working on everything a little bit at
Yeah.
once. The next update that's coming soon, I'm working on it. It's right now it's in early access. But the next update I'm working on it might actually push the game to what I would like to call 1.0,
Okay.
because it's going to complete, like there's going to be side branches where you can attack like special boss monsters, and the whole story from beginning to end. And there's like some story elements with the crew of your ships, and there's challenges and stuff like that that you can do, and it's all going to come together in the Alpha 5, at least I
Cool.
hope so.
Cool.
I'm working
So
on the trailer and everything right now, so yeah.
so we'll share the early access Steam page in the description
Yeah,
so
please.
that people can check out. You also share your progress of your game, your YouTube channel.
Yeah, my
So
YouTube channel is supposed to be kind of a, a half devlog, half tutorial on a little bit more advanced topic for programming. I'm hoping with my experience, I want to try to share like the
no, I
bottleneck and the
believe so
pitfalls.
because it has this taste that it's as if like in the middle of your work you realize, well, there is something cool here. Maybe you wanna show that part off, not necessarily in a teaching manner, not a tutorial, but here's something cool that I've come across, and this is how I dealt with it. So more like your kind of like a memoir or your diary of your
Yeah,
findings and your solutions. So that
yeah,
actually has a very cool touch to it. I really enjoy it.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
I try to be a little bit more different than just basic tutorial, but
yeah,
yeah, it's a work in progress.
yeah.
But do follow me if you can, so you'll see
Yes,
the progress yourself too.
yeah, yeah. It's always cool to see devlogs. The experience you got uh, in your previous job that was not Godot related,
No, not at all.
not at all.
I worked on a bunch of different engines, but we've never touched Godot before. It's only
But
when I came to Japan.
so how was the process of like? Did you go through a phase of uh, evaluating a bunch of game engines and choosing Godot over the others? How did that process?
Yeah, when I moved to Japan, the first thing I did was try to figure out what project I wanted to work on, and um, from there I decided well, I started looking at what engine would work best for what I had in mind, and well, Unity is not famous for being really good with 2D stuff, even though it can do
Yes.
2D. Lots of people says there's a lot of limitation, and it's
Yeah.
really more geared toward 3D games.
Yeah.
And Unreal, of course, is a 3D workhorse. And
It's more specialized. Yeah.
yeah, and like from all the other engines out there, like Godot really was the one that came back again and again on
Yeah.
Reddits and forums and all that as a really great. You know, of course, there's like stuff like RPG Maker, but I thought as a programmer, I thought maybe this is a little bit too. You know, there's always the right tools for the right job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like Godot seemed to be just at the right place,
Yeah.
like where it was a great engine, but it had powerful tools for programmers and developers, and it did a lot of stuff right, but without being too complex or too powerful, because I didn't need all the tools that like a 3D, like a big studio would need. Yeah, I don't need like the ability of 100 people working on the same project or something.
No.
So Godot seemed like just perfect. And I have to admit, once I got into the structure of the node and the scene and all that, it really resonated with me. I really like the architecture of the engine.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. It took me maybe one afternoon to pick up the language, the script. I already knew Python, so it wasn't too alien to just look in the documentation and figure things out. Few missing things in Python, but again, it's like, well, they're not really that much, necessary in maybe in a gaming engine, so it's good. But initially, I was actually using C#, and that quickly faded away because the moment I wanted to open a JSON file and read it and like parse it, I realized like writing that many lines of C# code was overkill, and the GD script version of that workflow was so easy. And I thought, like just learn GD script, and one afternoon was enough.
Yeah, when I started developing Solar Rogue, I knew I wanted it to be ported on mobile. And at that time, like in Godot 3, I think I started 3.0. They didn't, the C# didn't support like the mobile platforms. Now it's starting. There's still some limitation, I think, but it's nearly all there now.
Yeah.
But at that time it wasn't, so I couldn't, like I had to do to go with the GD script if I wanted to be able to compile easily on all the platforms.
But then you didn't choose C++ either.
Because that would have required me to figure out how to compile everything by myself. Like one of the biggest bonus for me about Godot is that like you download the template, the pre-compiled template for the current version, and you just fill out a bunch of settings in the export panel, and you can have the game in everything. There's a few more jumps and hoops to go through for Apple, but aside from that, it's very straightforward, and I haven't really seen other engines like allowing to export for all the different platforms so easily.
I mean, I guess
really straightforward.
Unity will say otherwise, but you're talking about the ease of exporting, not the number of possible platforms you could export to. You're talking about the experience.
Not the number of. Yeah, of course, I knew from the beginning that console and stuff is more difficult in Godot, but it's not impossible. It's just because it's open source and all that. It has more limitation for console, but it's even then it's possible. People keep saying it's possible. It's just a bit more work. But I'm not that much interested in console. I was really more interested in like PC, Mac, Linux, and Windows, Mac, Linux, and mobile like Apple and Android. And Godot does all that. Like again, except from Apple, and it's not Godot's fault. It's really more Apple's fault.
I agree
that you need a Mac and all sorts of weird stuff to be able to build. But aside from that, it's maybe like a 500 meg download for the templates and the game, and then you just fill out a bunch of lines, and within 10 minutes maybe you can be running the game on your Android phone. It's
I agree.
Even I'm not sure Unity can do it that fast.
But I also
Just the download is like 10 times bigger.
I agree. I mean, even just launching Godot is so like the whole thing is just 30 megabytes, like around that 30 megabytes without the export package. And what you mentioned, 500 megs, is actually if you want to include all the platform. You want to just go with Windows, it's even smaller. So I agree with you. Even like launching it, exporting it, the whole process seems very straightforward and expedited. I really enjoy that. And one thing I like about export, this was going to be one of my questions anyway, but we are actually covering it. I'm so glad. Um, you could create different export profiles, and that way you could have variations. Like it isn't just one Windows export profile. You could actually have variations of. I really enjoy that aspect of it too. You could actually try a few different settings. Maybe it's still Windows, but for a different machine profile. Maybe low hardware profile, that kind of. I really enjoy that. Like you could customize it.
Yeah, I have a release and a debug profile so that I sign the Android with different different signing keys, or I export with the debug options or not, and it's really helpful.
It is really helpful. So
another thing I would say is I've worked with many engines that have issues. Like it's working fine, for example, on Windows. And yes, it's easy to export to Linux, but then you run it on Linux and you have some issues because, it didn't tell you that this or that command didn't work on Linux or something. And then you have like visual glitches because the shader is not compiled the same way. Yeah. I have to admit, I haven't had much of that in Godot. Like I exported for Linux and I don't even have a Linux machine. I asked one of my friends to test it and he reported no issue whatsoever.
That's cool.
I exported it from Windows. I'm really, that was quite amazing.
Yeah, I usually see errors too. Like when it's obvious, they report it before you even exported it. Because why export, run, and then come across the problem and then just scratch your head like where is the problem? Because it's too late already. Like if it's something so common for the platform, before they export, if the game engine lets you know, that's a big win. Don't waste your hours. Yeah, that's cool. I haven't tried Linux either, but I guess it should work out of the box. So we've talked about pretty much the things that we like about Godot, but maybe there are things that you don't like. Maybe you think it's implemented better in other engines. So
honestly, not that much. I'm not sure it would work really well in a big environment like the way it imports files and all that. I don't actually know if it's possible to like have a server manage the import and cache the import, because one of the things is like you don't want, like in a big team, you don't want all the developers having to convert the texture, for example. Like you want to do it once on the machine and then like spread it everywhere, so that because it can be quite expensive, like if you're converting PVRTC textures or something.
Okay.
But aside from that, like there's not much bad experience I've had with Godot. It's really quite amazing, I think. JDScript is a bit slow maybe, but that can be easily, like if I really get into impossible bottleneck with GDScript, there's always GD native, so I can always bite the bullet and build on C++, and then I won't have any problem. So yeah, it's really well thought.
Yeah, it's very well. The concept is very well. Well, maybe I should find team of people who actually use Godot, like a common tool, instead of like we are all indies here. Maybe there is a different kind of workflow in a team situation.
It's a good question. I don't know how that would work, actually. I don't know what if there would be any issues or anything.
I think one thing I keep hearing sometimes is that whether you should, like, say you are using GitHub or any kind of Git setup, whether you should check in your import files or not. Are they machine specific, or like you download the import files from the repo? Well, you have
And
just,
yeah,
that kind of workflow.
but you
Like,
need to check in the import file. The dot import file is actually the configuration for the importer, so you
yeah,
actually need
yeah,
it. But there's the dot import folder, I believe.
yes,
That's where the compiled textures and
yeah,
everything are going.
yeah,
This maybe you don't need. I
yeah,
don't think I committed in my repo
yeah.
because
I
yeah,
think we
you don't
need
need it.
clarification on that, because when people say like do it or don't do it, they don't specify like is their advice for the .import folder itself, or the individual .import file extension in different folders. So which one should be checked in or not? Like, I think that has to be clarified, because I think one is the general like definition that maybe everybody in the team will benefit. But if you are checking in your individual import file, you are just imposing that definition file on someone else's repo. So that kind of.
Yeah.
But
But then again, all the scene files and everything are all text file, so that
yeah,
can be a problem if you have huge scenes.
yeah,
But at the same time, it means that when you're working as a team and you
yeah,
have conflicts, they're really easy to fix in Git.
yeah,
So that's also a big plus for me.
yeah,
Like when I was working in big project, like in Unreal, for example, where there's a lot of binary files, um, there's nothing you can do. Like when there's a conflict, you're like, when one of the people's work is gonna get scrapped for today.
yeah. So, but generally speaking, you don't have a big beef.
I have to say no. It's yeah, but everything is like the structure and everything is so great. I'm really liking it.
Yeah,
That's why I think I'm gonna use it for my next project too.
yeah. I'm gonna work on a 3D project soon. I'm expecting some problems that I haven't actually come across in 3D workflow. Because it's like, well, in terms of comparison, well, if Unity is good for 3D projects, and that's why people choose Godot, because it's good at doing 2D projects. So I'm still trying to stick with Godot, but I'm gonna try to do a 3D project. So I'll see if it actually. Oh,
I I have to I have to admit I've been quite curious about the other aspect of Godot because like I purposefully, because as my first indie developer project, I purposefully chose uh, a game that would be fairly simple. The fact that it's in space and everything, there's no physics, there's no collisions, there's very little AI nav mesh and stuff. There's no
yeah,
animation. Ships don't need to have animations. There's a few like particles effects and stuff, but mostly, I mean, I can go as far or as little as I want to because it's a turn-based strategy game
yeah,
more. So like I'm quite curious, like implementing physics and other stuff,
yeah,
how it's going to like how it works. Like I know there's been a lot of discussion. People are not happy with the way Godot handles physics. There's Bullet and there's their
yeah,
own Godot physics system,
yeah,
and like neither seems quite up to the task. So but haven't played with that, so I don't
yeah.
know how good or bad it is. Godot being open source, it also means that if there's
Yes,
something that's not working the way you want, it's very easy to switch it for something else. Even if it's not for the project itself, it can be for your own project, but
yes,
you can always patch stuff yourself,
yes.
and it's very easy. So that's a big plus too.
I
Like
agree.
I've worked with when I was working at Gameloft, I've worked with other engines that we had access to the source, and it's so much more powerful what you can do once you have access to the
To
source.
the source, yeah. Well, yeah, which is available all the time. Godot.
Yeah, with Godot, not with other engines.
See, C++ is not something I want to touch. But for a guy who knows C++, yeah, you could change everything in the engine. You
Yes,
could
yes.
be constantly compiling your own version, because it's available. So there's no licensing penalty or like lawsuit waiting for you around the corners.
Oh, that's a really good, yeah.
Yeah. So, and plus, I mean, if you want to help the community, whatever you are changing, you could also start a pull request, and then maybe your change will be merged into the next version of the public copy too.
Yeah, but I haven't had to do that yet, so that's
Yeah,
also good.
yeah, that's also good too. So, um, yeah, we covered a few things about the benefits of using Godot. Uh, Maybe I mean this could be a very specific question. What aspect of Godot you like the most, or maybe it benefited the most your project?
Like I would say there's like the architecture, like the scene and node structure. I think it's great. Like the whole scene that acts like prefabs in Unity but are way more powerful.
Hmm.
That's really like that made my life so much easier.
Yes.
Like designing each part of my game. Like I can design a unit, a ship with all its animation and everything in a separate scene, test it in a separate scene, and then bring it into my main game. And it's just a big help to the workflow.
Yeah.
But also like for an engine that hasn't maybe been as big as Unity, I would say the documentation and the community is really great. Like,
Yeah.
anytime I have a question or I'm like, how do you
Yeah.
do this in Godot or something, I've found the answer really easily, which is
Uh,
not something
yeah.
Unity is like probably the best for this kind of stuff. But the other engines I've used didn't have that good of a documentation or
Yeah.
community around the engine itself. So the
I
community
agree.
is also a big help.
I agree. And when I switched to Godot maybe less than a year ago, that was one of the most common things I heard against Godot. People kept saying there isn't enough documentation, there isn't enough, it's like big enough audience out there who can help you. Um, Even a few months after I switched, I found that statement largely false. I was able to get help. The documentation is actually that could use some help. GD Quest Nathan is actually he is undertaking that for
Yeah,
me.
yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's a big task, so good luck to him. Maybe I'll interview him one day too. Maybe he'll talk about because he's doing work with Godot on a different level. He's not building games, or like maybe he is, but the community knows him as the Godot training guy.
Yeah,
So I'm sure he has a whole other story to tell. But yeah, he's been great help, and other YouTube channels too. And like almost every week or a couple of weeks, I come across another channel that is dedicated to Godot tutorials. So I'm actually surprised. I have not expected to see that much growth or acceptance in the community. Um, I don't know if all these people are switching from other game engines, but seems like our number is growing.
yeah.
That's good.
It's a great way to approach game development, I think.
Yes. But again, we know that Godot is very good for 2D. I think maybe you and I will try 3D sometime, and then we'll find that it's maybe missing a few things here and there. But that's what they are trying to fix in Godot 4.0, which is going to come out next year. That
Yeah,
might change things.
that's gonna be interesting. I don't think I'll be able to upgrade Solar Rogue. I've been following the updates, and updating has been fairly painless.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I'll be able to port Solar Rogue to 4.0.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, changing your version number drastically, like, it's always a game. So.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, so far I've been lucky with the point one upgrades, especially the last two updates. I think it was about batching, PD batching. That
yeah.
might be helpful maybe in your case.
Yeah, well, I on Android there's much more of a bottleneck for the number of draw calls, so I've been having some performance issues there, rendering a lot of text, and I've been following the 2D batching
Yeah,
performance
guidelines.
improvements. It's made us quite a bit of a difference, but I think there's still space for improvement.
Yeah,
But on PC, it doesn't really matter. Even on Apple, it doesn't really have any impact.
yeah.
So it's
But on Android, you mentioned
probably
that
not a priority.
the text rendering is that it could use some help.
Yeah, I think so.
Well,
That's one of the issue I've been struggling with a bit.
maybe we could talk more specifically about your project. We've been headway that you would like to share your screen and maybe a recent improvement you have made or a recent problem you encountered, up to you. So
That's the main scene
main scene.
of my game, and well, that's the main menu of my game, and then I have this main scene here that's the actual game. And again, like that's just amazing because like yes, I can be in the main menu and start the game from the beginning, but because of the way scenes work, I can
Yeah.
just be in the main scene. I can just say play the main scene and I start straight into the game. Of
Yeah.
course, I had to code what happened when you start without having gone through the main menu, but
Yes.
it just starts with a bunch of default values,
Yeah.
and it's just great.
But it's actually self-contained, which is great because it's modular, or say like in terms of unit testing, you could just test one entity and with like dummy data, like the way you said it, it's actually depending on external data, but you could use dummy data, and in the real condition it's going to read the required data from the main scene. So in that way you are covering both ends. That's actually great.
Yeah. And well, yeah, the way my game works, it's also heavily based on JSON. So most
Mm-hmm.
of the game data is not actually inside the engine. It's in JSON's file that I have here.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have this all the items in the game are here.
Yeah.
So like maybe I should. I can't. I don't think I can make this part bigger, but
Yeah, I
yeah.
think it's
Uh,
legible. Yeah, it's
So
we
like
see missile mining laser JSON. Yeah.
yeah, and the way this works is basically that each of like it's a dictionary, and each of the keys I call them components.
Hmm.
So like you see, you have the icon component and the animation component and the weapon data component
Yeah.
and the equipment component. And the way this works is inside the game. After that, I have a bunch of behaviors, and these behaviors are just plain node with a GDescript attached to them. And what it does is that it processes like the data based on the on
The
the
key.
JSON that's attached to the item.
Yeah.
So like I spawn an object, an entity in the world that contains the JSON data for that entity. So like I have like I don't know if you look at maybe which one. I don't know. You can look at the railgun or
Railgun. Yeah.
something. So like if you look at the railgun, that's the object that will spawn in the world, but
Yeah.
it's just the icon right now. There's nothing. And
Yeah.
then after that, I attach the JSON to that object, but it's just a data container with some visuals, and everything else, how it behaves, how it can be picked up or not, and all that is handled by one of those behavior. So I have my inventory component here, and like it registers to a bunch of events. And if for example the object has this equipment component, then it means it can be picked up. So when you push a key, for example, to pick up something, so in the player behavior, if you hit the key, not sure where the input handler is, but yeah, well,
Input.
that's the input. It's probably the unhandled input actually, but yeah, like in the unhandled
Yeah.
input,
Yeah.
if you click the key to pick up something, then it's gonna go through all the items that are on the tile that you want to pick, and if it has the equipment component,
Yeah.
then it's gonna be picked into your inventory. But for example, like I don't know, like the planets, they don't have an equipment component,
Yeah.
which means that automatically they're not going to be picked. And I could make a planet that you can pick up just by adding a equipable component to it. And it all works like that. Like I can make anything a weapon if I just add a weapon data component. So it makes it really easy to mix and match and create stuff. Like I recently just added this torpedo launcher MK2,
Yeah.
and this I just copied and pasted the MK1, and I just changed a bit the data and the description and the name and like the values of the crafting table and all that. And I mean, it's basically done. I don't need to change anything inside the engine. It's now part of the game, and
Yeah.
it's
So
yeah,
this
I
is
really like this structure.
yeah, this is definitely a different approach. Normally, when you define a data structure in JSON, say if it's a weapon, it's like, or any kind of inventory item, you could put a key there with the value true or false, and the key will be like pickable, something like. So your architecture passes keys around, and if the key is existing in a different JSON file, like you transfer the data like in between. That's what I understood. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not sure. Like, well, actually, if I run the game,
Yeah.
you can kind of see it. So if I go into the remote, so you can see the stuff. So like you have my auto loads here, and then you have my behaviors here.
Yeah.
But then you have the game tiles. And inside the game tiles is all the visual stuff that's been loaded, because since it's a roguelike, of course, it's been generated randomly, automatically by
Yeah.
the game. So I have actually in my I have actually in my behavior the level loader here that's responsible for loading all the stuff and generating all the random level
Items,
stuff.
yeah.
But then it just puts them all inside the game tile.
Yeah.
And for example, if you look at this, this is an enemy probe.
Mm-hmm.
It's a ship, and what it does is that it has here these base attributes is what came from the JSON.
Okay.
So like you can see the same thing here, like the name ID, the sprite, the icon, the mounts, the weapon, and then the AI component
Itself
that tells the game that it's just the JSON, but like once the JSON is loaded, it's just a bunch of dictionary and arrays that Godot can just display like that.
Render, yeah.
And one thing that's really nice is that like the visual is actually here. This is an empty, like a node 2D, a simple node 2D, just to keep the position of the entity.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's really nice with this is, yes, it's like to contain this, I needed a script, right? So I have this, where is it? It's in, I think it's one of the base. Yeah, I have this attribute script.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that loads the JSON. So it just keeps the JSON as a base attributes here. So it just gets initialized when I request an object from my level loader, it just gets initialized to whatever is inside the JSON.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's nice is that to access and modify these attributes, I implemented some accessor. So I have this get attrib and these set attrib. But when you set an attribute, it will never set it inside the base attribute. It will override these attributes by using the modified attribute. And that allowed me to implement saving. Like it took me 5 minutes to implement saving, because all I have to do is go through all the objects in my scene, grab the modified attribute, and save it in another JSON.
Yeah, because you don't want to overwrite your base attributes.
No, the base attributes are actually cached. So I share them between all the all the simple probes have the same base attribute. So I don't need to load the JSON multiple times. I just cache the JSON and
load it once.
reuse it. And then these modified attribute, well, like for example, let's say that the simple probe hasn't done anything, it hasn't taken any damage, then the modified attribute is just empty. But let's say it's taken some damage. Well, if you look, the
damage,
I don't know, like the probe, like there's a lot of stuff in the base attribute, but the current HP is going to be in the it should be you see there's the destroyable component. So I just need to change the hull points here, and then it means that what's going to be saved is just this one key, right? Because this is the only thing that's going to be inside the modified attribute. So that works amazingly well. It wasn't even like, when I started, it wasn't even quite planned. I thought it would be better not to overwrite the base attribute so I could cache them eventually. And then when it was time to implement the saving, I realized, well, I just need to serialize the modified attribute. And that's really easy because it's already JSON.
Yeah, I had a similar need for a different reason. Say I was loading game data from a JSON file, then the player was making changes. Well, basically, the data I loaded was assigned to the player data structure. But as the player progresses in the game, I'm actually changing the data assigned to the player object. But then the problem is, what if the player wants to restart a game? So am I going to reload the files only to assign it to the player object again? So your method here is like I have a similar setup. Instead of saving it, because in my game there is no save logic because it's a very short game, but I'm actually using a similar approach that I keep a loaded dictionary and empty one, and then instead of reloading everything from the disk, there's a cache version that is actually assigned to the player object if the player wants to restart the game.
Mm.
So yeah, definitely different ways of addressing data problems.
Yeah. But it's a very different approach
It
than
is.
like normally having like a player scene that would have like all the characteristics of the player and all
Yeah,
the scripts to control the player and all that.
yeah,
I wanted to try something a little bit different. This is something that's very, very popular in the roguelike dev
yeah,
community.
yeah,
Everyone talking about ECS. It's not quite an ECS because ECS means entity component
mhm,
system. It's not quite an ECS because my systems, which are basically the behaviors here,
yeah,
the systems is supposed to be managing memory and trying to do optimization on how to allocate memory and how to process the data. Like it should be trying to avoid cache miss by processing all the data at the same time, for example, and doing some fancy logic for optimizing performance. It's not doing any of that. But
yeah,
at the same time, it's turn-based, so most of these behaviors don't have any loop. They're just reacting to events. So I have the action point manager, the action point behavior here that just triggers a global event when it's something's turn, like it's this new ship's turn, and then it triggers this on object turn event. And then, if it's an AI, for example, it might do some stuff, and if it's the player, then it's going to be waiting for an input, for example,
yeah.
or something like that. So it's all triggered by events. So when you're not moving, since it's a turn based, there's absolutely nothing happening. There's no code being run anywhere.
Cool, cool. This way, people get to see like a part of like problem in the say for a beginner. It's like, well, it's writing code for sure, but you would like to know how other people solve similar problems. I think this will be a great help to people who are facing similar issues.
I actually did a video recently on the different data structure model I've seen while I was working at Gameloft, like whether it's putting all the data uh, inside your engine,
Yeah,
or having an external engine,
yep,
or like using JSON or using like a database or
yep,
something. And there's good and bad of all of those methods, and
exactly.
it's really up to the developer to figure out
Yeah,
which is going
yeah,
to be the best method depending on the type of game they want to make,
yeah.
right?
I mean, general rule of thumb, prototyping, don't bother with a database. You just have hard coded data. But then I think general piece of advice is that as your project grows, you try to get more and more abstract with data layer.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah,
you eventually want other people that might not be programmer
yep,
able to modify your data. Or if you're
yeah,
planning to have like modding,
yep,
technically it would be trivially easy in my game to just change the name of everything and just have a Star Trek team or a Star Wars team game,
yeah,
because like everything is just plain JSON data, so
yeah,
it would
yeah,
be trivial to
yeah.
mud it if you wanted to.
I think that's something I would like to cover soon. I'm also running a meetup group, and one of the talks I would like to give in that group is modularity or making mods, or how easy to make mods in Godot. Because when I was exporting my game, actually anyone who actually has Godot right now, they could go to the export options. You could export your whole executable, but there's also the option to export your PCK file. And essentially, when you do full export, there is the exe file as well as the PCK file exported. The exe file I found out is the Godot engine itself. So when you deliver um, your game, you're essentially deploying the exe file and the PCK file. And the exe file is the Godot engine itself without the debugger, which is actually running the PCK file alongside. And you could have multiple PCK files, and at runtime, if you actually create an interface, your game could actually choose different PCK files, and they will be the mods for your game. So, I mean, I just pretty much gave the whole meetup presentation in it. The workflow, maybe how to break down your scene assets, maybe that will be, the challenge. Because, like, maybe you could talk about your export. I mean, do you want to show the export settings you have? Like, are you exporting all the assets in your project, or are you being particular in?
In my project,
Yeah,
I put everything that I want to export. I put it in this data folder,
yeah,
and I try to keep out of it stuff that I don't want to export. I
yeah,
sometimes have some, like I have like a reference folder, but
yeah,
then you can put a .git ignore,
yeah.
.gd ignore, I mean,
Easy.
and then it's going to completely ignore. You can't have it's not going to show up even in
The
the editor.
options. Yeah,
So it's only for myself, and everything else like that I need, I try to keep it pretty clean
yeah,
so that it's going to export. There's of course options you can add, but the
yeah,
only option I have is to include JSON's file.
yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be exported by default.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, but aside from that, it's pretty much exporting
Yeah, see, this
everything.
is a different architecture. You are cognizant of what you want to export, so you keep that folder clean. Nothing that will not be exported goes in there.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, and
And from time to time I check, because there's always like scenes or some, I create test scenes from time
yeah,
to time.
creeping
And
in,
so
right?
before a release, I always go through the folders and I check, and oh
Yeah,
look, I have a temp scene here
yeah,
somewhere. Like I added this debug folder actually. You see it's empty now, so
yeah,
I'm getting ready for release now, so I've cleaned it up.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, sometimes
It's an
I clean
ongoing
up.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will definitely try that export option. Like maybe check off a few things and put them in individual PCK files. And I actually want to try that mod.
Yeah, having separate PCK file could be interesting. I
Yeah,
don't really know how to make it work, and I don't know if you can like add PCK file at runtime or something.
I
I
think
haven't
you
checked that
could.
out.
I mean, at least I've heard
Probably
if
because it comes from the editor, right? And the editor is made in Godot, so like
exactly.
if the editor can
Yeah,
do it, the game can do it too.
exactly. Which is another thing that actually I'm glad you mentioned. Godot itself is written with Godot.
Yep. Yeah,
I mean,
amazingly.
this sounds too Inception. That's actually, I mean, for me, the moment of revelation was when I was looking at the theme options. Um, I noticed that the UI components, like you could, when you change your Godot theme, that automatically changes the look of your UI components that you could use by default in your game. Then it
Mm.
hit me, you know what? Like everything that I'm seeing in the editor are the UI components I want to use in my game. It's as if like someone actually wrote Godot with Godot itself, like, but then I actually confirmed it later.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, but I mean,
And that's why they've been
something looked
able to run
funny.
the
Yeah,
editor.
yeah,
That's why they've been able to run the editor in the web browser, because you
exactly.
can export the game in the web, so you can export the editor in the web.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing.
I'm not sure if that actually works in Chrome. I've heard that it actually works in Firefox.
Yeah, I heard it's not ideal, it's not perfect, but still
Yeah,
the fact that it's possible is already amazing.
but hey, a game engine this complex, this sophisticated, running in a browser, it's I mean, marvelous.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. It actually really uh say you're at work, you wanna pick something quickly. It's like, well, you just launch it. I mean, like during lunch break. I mean, I'm not really promoting anyone to do their own work at company hours. I mean, mind you, a lot of people work from home these days.
Oh yeah.
So I actually really like this shader, the grid flow. Yeah,
Yeah, I got a lot of good positive comment
yeah,
on that one.
yeah. It gives you
I was
this.
trying to.
Yeah.
One of the problem is that in the space you can't really see the grid, so I wanted to wait for the player
Mm-hmm.
to be able to see the grid, but having like a permanent grid always on top seemed like it would distract from the rest of the game. So
Yeah.
like I came up with this like sliding grid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
I
I kind
think
of
the
like it.
pace is also good too. Like the way it, like there's a delay. Like now we wait. The next time it kicks in from the bottom right corner, I think that delay is also very well picked.
There's always a lot of tweaking involved in these kind of things, right?
Yes.
Like the
Yep.
wormhole is
Yeah.
still kind of a work in progress. I'm still working on it, but yeah, it's gotten to a point where I kind of like it. But yeah,
Yeah. It actually warps the grid itself. I just saw.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome.
It's a post effect shader,
Yeah.
the warping, so it applies on top of everything.
Yeah, and shaders is a whole other topic. Really, I'm taking a course right now, and but then there's just so much to learn. No matter how many shader courses I take, it's as if there's always so much more to learn about this. And somehow writing shaders in Godot, uh, well, typing the code seemed a lot more user friendly than writing it in Unity. Mind you, Unity has been pushing the what is it they call the visual, the node, you connect the nodes together. I forgot there's a name for it.
Visual shader,
Yeah, visual
visual
shader.
inster.
Well, it's visual
Yeah.
shader in Godot, but they have a similar naming in a way from it for so long. I
Yeah,
forgot the name.
it's been like 5 years since I've used
Yeah.
Unity, so I'm not sure either.
So that is actually a great help. But if you want to write down code at some point, I find the developer experience a lot more friendly in Godot. I mean, so far, I mean, I haven't done much, but yeah, we are seeing those JSON values now displayed on the screen. The ship's mounts on the left and the cargo holds on the right.
Yeah, exactly. And when you look at the information, that's the
Yeah,
description. It's all coming from the JSON here, description.
that's cool. Cool. So, what is the release date?
Well, if Alpha 5 goes well, I think it might be released in probably January or May. Yeah, probably or around Christmas maybe.
Christmas.
Like I think it's in a good shape. Like there's a lot of stuff I would like to add. Like I would like to make it as complex and as a big game like I don't know like other roguelikes like Dwarf Fortress or something. But that
Yeah.
I would need to work on it for like the next 5 years, and I'm just like right now there's not enough interest I think in the game, and I think this is already a fun little game. So I don't know if there's much need to add more. Like it's already like the whole goal of the game is to be a challenge to get to the bottom and to come back. And I think it's a little bit like FTL, right? FTL have
Yes.
short sessions, and the goal is just to beat the boss at the end, and you start over until you can do it, and then you try to do it with some challenges like with different ships or something. And that's kind of what that's kind of what my goal is, and I think I've accomplished that goal. I think it's right now, like even I've managed to finish the game because I feel I have to be able to finish it, otherwise it's probably impossible. But I can't do it every time. But at the same time, it's not the feeling that like the game is unfair or something. It's like very often when I die, it's like shit, I was careless and
Yeah.
I got I got I got ended myself. So like yeah, it's like yeah, that's a nice feeling. That's the feeling I want. Is like when you die, it's because you were careless, and then
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
try to be better the next time, be more careful,
Yes.
and have a better strategy and all that.
Well, I think in that sense, the experience sounds similar to the way I experienced it when I played Banished. I don't know if you played it. Um, I mean,
Banished.
it's not a roguelike; it's a different genre.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know the name. Yeah.
It's basically um, you start the game with like 20 settlers. You build houses for them, or actually, they build the houses. You just designate areas. It's one of those city builder games,
Mm-hmm.
or like there's strategy involved. But then um, some players complained about the fact that there is no goal of the game. Like you could keep playing it, you don't really win the game. Um, but then the question is, well, why do you even play a game? Well, because you want to have fun. Well, are you having fun while building, constructing buildings and uh, multiplying your population, all that stuff? Well, if the answer is yes, well, then mission accomplished. There are achievements you could get, and the game is hard. Like you couldn't get so many of those achievements, even if you tried for weeks and months. So in that sense, well, maybe the goal is to get those achievements, but there is no end of game that actually says you have won. So that's a whole other concept there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It depends on what your goal is, and I kind of personally like games that have an end. Even
yeah,
though I'm a really big fan of sandbox game too, but
yeah,
in general, I like games that have some kind of ending or at least
yeah,
some kind of goal you can achieve,
yeah,
even if it lets you play afterwards.
yeah,
So that's why I wanted this game to have a clear goal
yeah,
and a clear finish line.
yeah.
But
Well,
I
that
could
is
still.
yeah more important maybe in some genres than others.
Hmm. But I could still see myself working more on these kind of like on the game itself.
Yeah,
For example, if it became more popular, right now there's about 12 levels with 3 side branches,
yeah,
optional, if you will. And like I would like to add another 12 levels and
yeah,
maybe another 3 4 side branches with interesting
yeah.
different gameplays. Like I base myself a lot on NetHack, and yeah, not many people have played the original NetHack, but
I
uh,
haven't.
I, I've played it quite a lot, and I find it really amazing. A very similar one is also Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, and yeah, like it has a lot more levels. Like I think NetHack has something like 50 or 60 levels, like including all the side branches and all
Yeah,
that. So I'm far from that,
yeah,
but that's something I could see myself adding more and more. Like NetHack has like fun different levels where like it becomes like a Sokoban game or something, or
okay.
and like I would like to add this kind of stuff, but like unless I'm getting like $1,000 downloads, or like I get enough money to keep working on it, I'm probably going to have to start thinking of something else, maybe something. I mean, premium games are not the best sellers right now, so yeah, I'm thinking of maybe something, because this has no possibility of being a freemium game. Like I'm not going to be selling stuff inside the game or something like that. That's really
Yeah,
not the
that's
point of the
a
game.
whole other strategy. You gotta plan it out. I mean, that's a whole other business.
Oh yeah. If I have to say, like one of the things that I don't know how to deal with really is the whole um the whole marketing and the whole business side of things,
Yeah,
like and that and the art, because I'm not really an artist or anything. So
yeah. If I remember correctly, you said in one of your videos that you hired help for making art.
yes, I
Yes, yes.
hired an artist to that I would never have been able to even do these ships by myself.
Cool.
So I hired someone to work on all the on all the assets like the
Yeah.
sun and the little ships and the
Yeah.
planets and all that.
I
I
think
mean,
that, yeah, that's important to share with the community, because there's this idea that indie guys do everything by themselves. There's a guy out there who is just learning Godot and wants to be an indie guy. Um, I mean, hiring help is not the end of the world. It doesn't disqualify you from being an indie. So you could actually get help in any domain you want or need. So,
yeah, for sure.
use your
I
strength in the right place, basically.
Yeah, and yeah, I think there's still a lot of indie developers that do everything themselves,
Yeah.
but my feeling is that they often come from something else than programming background. Like an artist learning to code to make his game,
I
or
agree.
a game designer that knows how to make a fun game and
Yep.
just learns to program or to do some art to make
Yeah.
his game come to reality,
Yep.
is more common, I think, than a programmer going into game development.
Yeah.
Because like me, as a programmer, I don't have the skill for making musics or for making
Yep.
the art, or even the gameplay. I've had to learn so much. I thought I knew how to make a good game and how to balance the game and all that, but I
Yeah.
realized as I was adding like my 100 like different weapon or something in the
Yeah.
game, like
Uh,
balancing everything is actually a skill that not many people have.
well, yeah. How many is too many? But not in the sense that it'll be too heavy to load. Well, it's too many because um, does the player really need to see hundreds of items? I mean, when is it too much and overwhelming?
Yeah, but also like what do you make of all these items? Like what are they?
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty hard.
Because I mean, the way you architectured this, it's easy to duplicate JSON files and keep changing some values, and you could actually have as many levels and as you want.
Yes.
But how does it affect the gameplay? That's a whole other question.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
The whole challenge has been like keeping like Excel sheets or
yeah,
spreadsheets of all the items in the game and trying to make sure that an item that comes in earlier doesn't overpower another
yes,
item that comes in later or something, and trying to balance like what's the drop rates, like
yeah,
how often should this or this drops. Like I have some very unique item in the game that I want the player to find only once every 10 game or something,
yeah,
but like how do you figure out what's the drop rate you need to put so
yeah,
that people will
yeah.
find it from time to time.
Well,
And then
because
especially
yeah, programming that is easy, but programming like that kind of logic, deciding on that ratio is
yes.
because once you figure out some kind of numerical value, that's fine. Like just write some code, but what are you really writing? That's the hard.
yeah,
Yeah, good to see.
I think I shot myself in the foot
Yeah,
there. I'm gonna die here.
yeah. Thing.
But I'm trying. Ah, shit! I was really hoping he would die. I have
That's
no more
normal.
energy.
Failing at your own
Oh,
game. So
yeah. I just have 290 energy left, but I
yeah,
just
you
got
gotta
uranium,
recycle.
so I might be good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You recovered. So basically, your plan is to get the alpha done and then release maybe as early as Christmas, maybe a little after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll get the Alpha 5 out, and then we'll see how many issues pop up and how
Yeah.
long it takes. Because releasing for all the different platform is straightforward, but you need to write the updates, you need to upload new screenshots, you need
Yes.
to do new trailers and all that, and then promoting everything. And some like Apple, once again, it can take like weeks before you can get it on the store,
The story.
like because of the review process and the
Yeah.
compilation and
Yeah.
the all of that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I have
depending.
a similar horror story with Steam these days.
Yeah, I haven't had too much problem with Steam, though. Like the platform can be a little bit confusing sometimes.
Yes, it is clunky.
Yeah, itch.io did a much better job at like
Yes,
organizing everything and
it is
figuring out how
straightforward.
to. But then again, it's much more simple. Like there's not all the background from Steam with all the DLC and the bundles and all that
True,
you
it
can do
doesn't
in
have
Steam.
all those bells and whistles. Yeah, because I mean, I've done web development for more than 15 years. So
Coming from web development must be much
yeah,
harder.
when I look
I'm
at
kind of
the
used to clunky interfaces for tools for the game developers. So.
yeah, looking at it hurt me. Like it's like you're $1 million company, like you should have something better than this. But I mean, it already shows like they kept building on top of it. Like here's this section, let's shove this section under that other section, and I believe they just kept writing documentation file after document file, but uh, maybe they never really had time to do everything from scratch, and it clearly shows
Probably
that.
not, yeah.
So, well, maybe one day it'll be done from scratch again. Okay,
Probably at some point.
we covered a lot of angles and
I think so.
bit of your game, bit of Godot stuff, like a good mix of things that I believe um, people out there will really take advantage of. We will both share this video on our channel, so I'll be sending you a copy, and of course your store page will be linked under the in the description under the video.
I appreciate.
So yeah. Any other?
Yeah, I'll link your YouTube channel too under my videos and all that. So
cool. Okay, so we'll catch up later then. Okay.
all right.
Thank
Well,
you.
pleasure talking to you.
You too, likewise. So have a good day. Morning still there? Yeah.
Yeah. Have a nice day and have a nice evening.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.